All right, guys. So, interesting thing about putting on mass is it's actually a lot harder than you think. I mean, the right kind of mass is what I'm talking about, right? The other kind of mass is it's not an issue. But I was going closer to 170, and then by the end of this month, I haven't weighed myself since I was close to 170. That was probably a couple weeks ago or whatever. And then I weighed myself this morning, and I was 164. And I'm like, oh no, that's bad. I want to put on mass. I don't want to, I don't want to go backwards. So I had to kind of rethink what was going on. But uh, I think there's quite an interesting balance between the fat and fat loss and muscle gain. Okay, so you always have to remember that muscle weighs more than fat, and yeah, so you might be losing that fat and still weighing more, right? Um, so my typical weight is 160 roughly, 160, 165, and it likes to fluctuate around there. But typically, when I'm moving more towards 165, I'm actually starting to gain weight. I've 159, yeah, stuff, some of that. The lightest weight I've gotten was my very first competition was 147, and then when I actually just did keto, when I was experimenting with straight keto, I got down to 147 again, which was pretty easy to do. Um, the body will do that pretty quickly. But putting on mass, I've always had this goal to get to 200 pounds, just to see if I could. I've never done it before, so I've gotten to about 180, and that was my max. And when I did it before, it was it wasn't the exactly the right kind of mass, so I definitely was bigger. Um, but anyways, so on a mass program, why am I losing weight? It's an interesting uh, factor here. But because I'm trying to put on the right kind of mass, which is the muscle mass, I still don't think that I'm going the wrong way. The reason why I say that is because if I was actually losing muscle, I would be concerned, right? But if I'm losing the fat weight as part of the equation of my fluctuation of muscle gain and fat loss, you need to gain the muscle first, which boosts your metabolism to output more work, and then you're going to lose the fat. So just looking at the progression, I gained the weight, and then I lost the weight. But this is the big indicator that tells me that I didn't lose any muscle mass, is because my strength gains are still improving. Now I'd be concerned if I felt like I was losing muscle, and I was training and I wasn't able to do as much. That would indicate to me that there was muscle loss. So my muscles are probably getting more denser, and the fat is probably going down, right? So the interesting thing is, right now I actually appear larger, even though my weight has gone back down. So the reason why that happens is because a lot of times when people are trying to put on mass, it actually isn't really necessary to look bigger. So a lot of times when you're leaning out, you get deeper cuts, deeper serrations in your muscles. So naturally, you look bigger. Okay, and again, in photos, there's no height, right? So anybody looking at a photo, I'm a pretty short guy, right? So I'm probably gonna look a little bit bigger in a photo than actually in real life, right? So that's the thing, right? So um, you you want to realize that, yeah, like looking bigger isn't always about putting on size, but that is my goal. I still want to get to that 200 pounds just to see if I can. Um, and yeah, and then also have the deep cuts, which should make me look like, you know, really, really huge, right? Um, but we'll see. But yeah, I just want to do an update and pretty much say, like, and this is 100%. I don't want to just show my good results, that I'm always moving forward and everything's fine and dandy. No, you know what? Like, to be honest, for me, cutting fat is easier than putting on muscle mass. Like I said, for me to get to 147 with the right strategy to just really lean out, to get that really kind of shredded look, it's not hard for me, right? And in fact, it's actually easier, like I said, than putting on muscle mass. Like 147 is the lowest I can go that's healthy, and I think 200 would be ideal in terms of like looking like a bodybuilder, right? So and I've never hit that, so it's actually harder to put on weight, like raw muscle, than it is to lose the fat. So because let's put it this way, with the right strategy you can lose fat really quick, okay, incredibly fast, right? But with muscle, if you're doing more than 2 pounds of raw muscle like a month, then you're putting on fat. That's a guarantee, right? So there's always if you think about it right now, I weighed myself again like 164. If I want to get, and it's not going to be 100% raw muscle. I'm going to get to 200 and then I'm going to cut down to like 180 when I cut. Right, so realistically, being 200 pounds, it's not going to be raw lean muscle. Like, how long would that be? 164, 2 pounds a month. That's not realistic, So a lot of times people are like saying, "Oh man, I gained this." And I when I first started, I used to do that when I was trying to do the mass program, long time ago when I first started bodybuilding. I'd be like, "Yeah, I just gained like 10 pounds or whatever." But you can't gain 10 pounds of muscle in a month. That's just ridiculous. That doesn't even make sense, right? So, putting on weight is actually, especially muscle, putting on weight is easy. Let's just say putting on muscle is actually very hard. So I'm hoping that this turns out really well. And again, my weight is drawn back. I was moving towards 170, drawn back to 164, but I still think I'm on the right track. And, I should probably, sit in a pod or something and get some real measurements here. And that way we can really find out my muscle ratio to weight and so on and so on. But I should get that checked out and find out. But I feel like I'm still going in the right direction. Again, because I'm not losing any strength. That would be the concern. In fact, my strength and my numbers are going up on my training, so at a drastic pace. So I think I'm okay there. Okay, let's give some pointers on exactly what I'm doing. Right, so I'm eating at a higher frequency. So when I'm cutting or trying to maintain a weight, I am fasting. My fasting hours vary depending on what I'm doing. Right now, I've eliminated the fast so that I can get in more calories. Muscle cannot be built out of thin air. It needs material to build, right? So an increased amount of calories, you need to pull it in, and your body needs to use it like clay to build upon the foundation, right? So your body is capable of pulling its own resources. It can recycle 20% of the protein already in your body, but if we're building, I think it's better to provide the clay than have it to just move it around, So I've upped my calories only by a small amount. Again, I don't want to be putting on so much fat weight, so it is regulated. It's a higher protein. Normally, when I'm cutting, it's higher fat, so there's still fat intake, and I have on certain days, only when I'm falling off of diet, to be honest. I've had a couple of carbs. I mean, it's nothing crazy. I mean, I've had a couple cookies here and there, but nothing too crazy. And yeah, but I'm as 80% of the time I'm on a right now I'm on a carnivorous diet. Of course, cookies is not carnivorous, but I'm gonna be getting back on that today. So that's exactly what I'm doing. There's keep trying to keep my nutrients up. On a carnivorous diet, the concern again is going to be a malnutrition, right? Same thing with any other isolation diet is malnutrition is a concern. So I'm making sure that I'm finding other means to obtain the nutrition that I need. So yeah, so that's that. What else? Oh yeah, so last month it was a chest focus for mass, which is good because there's a lot of compound for the upper body. And this month it's going to be an interesting one because I'm going to shrink the waistline and put on weight at the same time. So it's a very interesting concept. A lot of people want that V shape when it comes down to bodybuilding. Big lats comes down to small waist, and there's a specific way to shrink the waistline. And when you look at the human anatomy, it really explains how to do it, right? So when you're looking at so let's cover this for a second. Okay. So when you want to shrink the waistline, a lot of people are looking at doing crunches or sit-ups. So that's the rectus abdominis. Okay, so that's the front of the abs. That's the six pack. So a lot of people are doing a lot of sit-ups and a lot of crunches, and they're actually just thickening the muscle, just like you would if you wanted bigger biceps. You'd do heavier curls or whatever, and then that bicep would get bigger, right? So a lot of people are doing sit-ups and crunches to target a smaller waist, and all they're doing is actually making their midsection bigger. So when you're actually doing sit-ups, you're actually making your stomach area bigger. Okay, so which is not a bad thing if you're already lean. Having bigger abdominal muscles and then leaning out gives a real nice six-pack, right? But if you have fat on top of it and you're building thicker rectus abdominis, it's only going to push the stomach out more because you got layers of fat on top of that, right? And then the transverse abdominis, which is underneath that, the muscle that's used during a plank. So that's the muscle that when you suck in your stomach, that's the muscle that is engaged. Okay, so when you flex your stomach, it's the rectus abdominis. When you suck in that stomach, it's the transverse abdominis, right? And then you have your obliques, okay, which wrap around, right, the midsection, and that actually acts as a belt. Okay, so when you actually strengthen those muscles, the twisting muscles, so like for instance, the muscles that are engaged when you're like throwing a baseball or something, okay, when you actually work on tightening those muscles, so those are the muscles that when you suck in your stomach, those are the ones that are engaged. Okay, so when you twist, you can feel that it's tightening. Okay, and again, when you do a plank, that's the transverse, and that's the other muscle that when you suck in, that's the muscle that's engaged. So by tightening those muscles, you actually shrink your waistline and make your waistline smaller. So when you're doing sit-ups, it's actually quite the reverse. So knowing the human anatomy and how it works is huge when it comes down to bodybuilding and stuff like that. Like again, when you're doing, a lot of times people are doing incline bench press to target the top of the chest. But when you understand the anatomy, there's better ways to actually target the chest, right? Because when you're doing an incline bench, even though it's inclined and it's pointed up like this, okay? So for instance, if you guys can see this, but when I go like this, it still engages a lot of the chest, but it's actually the shoulder. When you pull in the shoulder, then you can feel that upper chest tighten, right? So when you go like this, when you turn your hand like this, it actually engages it more, right? So for instance, so understanding anatomy is huge when it comes down to bodybuilding, right? Like how does every muscle connect. The change in hand position changes exactly what you're targeting. And again, how do you engage that? Again, if you're just pressing, right, it's a lot of chest, right? But when you push the shoulder, so a lot of times you have to engage fully through the shoulders, not just pressing through the arms, which is a lot of what is happening, right? And again, going back to the abs, right? To build a small waist, you need to actually engage the right muscles. Okay, so again, you want to shrink. That's the goal this month, is to shrink the waistline and put on more muscle mass. All right, there you go. So that's it for now. 15 minutes. That's good enough. All right, see you later, guys.